So I want to talk to you about this SNOW concept. When it comes to debt reduction, which is the great mantra in personal finance, and it's obviously a useful thing to do, we love to have all these SNOW terms. It started off with the debt snowball, and now Flexo from one of the personal finance blogs came up with a term called debt avalanche, which is really just a new name for an old method of paying down debts. And these ways of paying down debts are much better than the typical ways that most people do, which is three ways. One, sweep the debt under the carpet, forget it doesn't exist. The second method is peck and poke at it. So you've got a debt and every so often you pay a little bit down, but then you get sidetracked, so you stop paying it for a while, and you accumulate some new debt, then you try and pay it down again, and you're back in the shit sooner or later. Or the third method is that you can systematically demolish it, which is the subject of what we're talking about. As I said, there have been essentially two very similar ways to do this in a systematic way. The first way is what we call the debt avalanche. And the debt avalanche is simply where you take your debts and you sort them into order of highest interest rate debt first, regardless of size and regardless of expiry date, just the highest interest rate first, and then go to the lowest interest rate last. And what you do is you pay the minimum of every single debt that you have to pay every month. So you make sure you pay the absolute minimum, because otherwise you start getting penalties. So you must pay the minimum on every debt. But then the money that you've left over, let's say you've allocated 15 or 20% of your salary to paying it off. So maybe you're still contributing to your 401k to get the company match if you can, which is great for now. And you found another 10% or 15% that you can allocate to debt reduction. You're saving all your little pennies in a jar. You're not buying Starbucks. You're not having as much sushi. But you're still living well. You're buying cheaper fish and carrots and eating them together, and with a bit of rice on the side. So you've got some money that you've allocated for debt reduction every month. So you pay off the minimum. Then all of the rest that you've got allocated for debt reduction, you put into the largest debt first, the highest interest rate debt first. Then when all of that is paid off, you then still pay the minimum on all the other debts, but you've now got one less debt to pay the minimum on because you've already paid it off. So you take all the money that you've got left and put into the next highest interest rate, and you start to pay that one off, and you keep building up this amount, and you'll find that because the amount you're applying to each debt gets bigger and bigger each time, because you've got one less debt that you're paying the minimum on, so you're adding that to paying the next debt. You've got more and more to pay each debt off as you go along, and finally, once you've paid off all your debts, then you start not spending that money, you start putting that same amount of cash into your investment plan and start building up your investments. That's the theory. Dave Ramsey came up with a twist on that he calls the debt snowball. And the debt snowball is basically the same one, and it goes like this. This time, instead of ordering the debts from the highest interest rate to the smallest one, and by the way, why do you pay for the highest interest rate one first? Well, obviously, the longer you let it run, it's the highest interest rate, so you're going to pay more interest in total. But Dave Ramsey says, forget that. It doesn't really matter. It's going to make a very small difference mathematically anyway. Do it this way. Sort your debts instead into the size of the debt, the smallest one first. And again, pay the minimum of all the debts, and then apply the whole amount that you've allocated for debt reduction that's left after paying the minimums to paying off the smallest debt first. And you'll find you'll pay it off fairly quickly, which is great. You scored a big psychological win. For the first time, you've actually paid the whole debt off. And now again, you've got one less debt to pay the minimum on, so you've now got slightly more that you can apply to this next smallest debt. And you'll find you pay that one off a little bit quicker than you thought. Great, you've got two psychological wins, and also you've got one fewer debt left, so the snowball is building up again, and you apply it to the next biggest debt, and so on, until finally you're tackling the biggest debt last, but it's the only debt you have left. So it's not as daunting. You've seen that you can pay your debts off, so you're more likely to stay the course. So psychologically, that's a great way to go. Here's why I think it's wrong, for two reasons. One is obviously it's slightly more expensive. Dave Ramsey is obviously right. It may not be majorly expensive, but why spend more money? But there's a more important reason, and the reason is this. Debt reduction is not our goal. If our goal was debt reduction, then we could use either of those methods. I don't care. But our goal is to get wealthy. And our goal is to make a very, very big number, I believe. And we're not going to do that merely by eliminating all of our debt and starting to save. What I want to give you is a meltdown. But this time it's a controlled meltdown. It's where you suddenly decide to stop paying off your debts, even though you've got some debts left. But this is a good thing under my method, not a bad thing. And how is that? Simply this. Unlike Dave Ramsey and Suze Orman, I believe it's good, if you want to make money, to carry some debt. And we all know that there's things like good debt versus bad debt. And good debt is debt that you acquire for income producing assets, so like a house that's going to go up in value. And bad debt is something on a car that's going to go down in value. We don't want that. But now that we already have debt, who's to say it's good or bad debt? It's just debt. So what you do is you sort your debts in the order of the debt avalanche. This is critical. You must go from highest interest rates to the lower interest rates. Psychologically, you're going to continue with this because your passion will tell you that you've got this 5-year or 10-year goal to make a lot of money, and it will carry you through. You will pay down those debts because you've just acquired that passion. You're not going to stop now, for God's sake, the very beginning. So you'll carry through. And the reason why I want to sort from the highest interest rate to the lowest is this. You'll pay off those debts exactly the same way as I said before until you reach a certain point. And the certain point is this, that the after-tax value of that interest rate, so let's say you have a student loan, and that you have left at 2.9%. That's after-tax 2.9%, which is equivalent to no more than a 3.5% interest rate pre-tax. Can I ask you a question? Where are you ever in your lifetime going to see a 3.5% loan again? So why would you pay off that 3.5% loan that may be $10,000 or $20,000 or $50,000, then to turn around the very next day after you paid off, because it's your last debt, obviously being the lowest one, to turn around and then buy an investment property and then borrow $10,000 to buy it at 8.5%? Why would you spend 5% extra just to pay off one loan and buy another one? So my point is this. If investment grade loans are going to cost you 8.5% in the current market, stop paying off debt when the loans that you have got left after tax are less than 8.5%, which probably means 5.5% loans are left and less, because you've already paid tax. They're not tax deductible loans because they're personal loans. So you can't use the same 8%, which is tax deductible, to buy investment property and compare it to 8% loans on consumer loans. So take off about a third of the interest rate. There was an 8.5%, a 5.5% consumer loan is probably equivalent to an 8.5% investment loan. So when you get to about 5% is the price on your existing loans, stop paying them. And instead put that money that you had all in that snowball and roll it straight into your investment strategy and start running off on your investment strategy. Only one small catch with it is this, that if your loan that you have left, let's say your student loan, is only got 2 more years to run, or if it's a 0% credit card with only 1 year on it, don't make the mistake of tying that to a 20-year investment loan. Because in 1 year's time, when you do have to pay that loan back because it's called up, are you going to be able to sell that investment property to pay it off? No. So maybe you want to go and buy some stocks, or find something that can invest you more than 8.5%. If you can, buy it. If you can't, then by all means keep paying off the loans.